Welcome to those of you that joined us. We are going to wait for several minutes to give everybody the opportunity to join this meeting. For those of you just joining us, welcome. We are going to wait for several minutes to give everyone ample opportunity to join this meeting. We'll give it one more minute before we start the presentation. We're just waiting to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to join the meeting. I see a hand up, Michelle. If you'd like to speak, I am requesting you to unmute. If you have a question right off the bat before we begin.
Yeah, I just want to know where everybody is muted, and if there are questions, the chats is disabled.
Okay, can you see the Q&A on your end?
Yeah, okay, so you want us to put question and answer in there? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right.
All right. Yeah, you're welcome. Alrighty, so just a few more seconds to give everyone an opportunity to join. I still see people attempting to join the meeting. Once we have everyone join the meeting, we will go over some of the session statement, and then we will begin. Okay, I don't see anybody else joining the meeting. Prior to beginning this meeting, we'll start off with a session statement to give you a brief overview of what to expect. So prior to beginning our presentation, we want to address a few key points to ensure a smooth and productive session. This meeting will be recorded for transparency and accessibility for those unable to attend this meeting. By participating, you consent to being recorded. This meeting recording will be posted on our website. Santa Cruz County respects citizens' free speech and has developed a community meeting conduct standards to respect all meeting participants. Under these conduct standards, meeting organizers can remove disruptive individuals in person or online who engage in behavior that is slanderous, profane, threatening, or who exhibit other disorderly conduct that disrupts this meeting. To streamline the Q&A process, we plan to address all questions at the end of the presentation. We will address questions in the order they are received. Please use the hand raising feature or the chat function, which actually is disabled, so just use the Q&A function when seeking recognition to speak at the end of the presentation. This will help us facilitate a smooth flow of communication throughout the meeting and ensure everyone has an opportunity to speak and ask their questions. In the unlikely event of a power outage, we will stop the meeting for 15 minutes to wait for power restoration. If you find yourself disconnected, please attempt to reconnect. If you are unable to reconnect successfully, attempt to reconnect in 15 minutes. If the power outage persists beyond 15 minutes, we will have to reschedule the current meeting. We will communicate a new meeting date via CruiseAware. We appreciate your cooperation and look forward to a productive meeting. Now I'm going to hand off the meeting to Supervisor McPherson for his welcome statement.
Oh, hi, thank you, Tiffany. I just want to welcome everyone and just say that this is a difficult and unprecedented situation, unlike any I've seen in my 11 years as county supervisor. But we're trying to make the best of literally a moving problem that continues to move. And you'll get more details from our Director of County Community Development and Infrastructure, Matt Machado, and our Assistant Director, Steve Wiesner, as we go along in this. But I just wanted to welcome you, feel for you. I wish we could get at this early on, but it's going to take some stabilization and effort, in essence, before we can move forward with whatever the solution may be. So I welcome you. I'm sorry the situation is before us, but we're going to try to we will address it the best way and the best of our abilities that we have in the county. So with that, we can just go on, carry on with the meeting, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Supervisor McPherson. Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Wiesner. I'm one of the assistant directors here in the Community Development and Infrastructure Department with the county. In particular, I work in the transportation section, and my group is the group that's responsible for the maintenance and operations of the county's 600-mile road network throughout our entire county. So just really quick, just a few quick introductions. With me today is our Director of Community Development Infrastructure, Matt Machado. We appreciate also Supervisor McPherson and his staff joining us this evening as well. And not as panelists, but also listening in on the webinar tonight, I believe we have Chief Jed Wilson from CAL FIRE. I have a couple of my staff members here as well, Tim Bailey, who's our senior design engineer, who gets involved in a lot of these types of projects. And we also have our road superintendent joining us this evening, Alex Sandoval. So appreciate everybody being here. Very quickly, so my presentation tonight is going to be very similar to what I did last Thursday. And looking from the number of participants we have this evening, I suspect that many of you heard this last week. So I'm going to try and go fairly quickly, but for those who didn't hear it last week, I'm going to repeat what I did last week. And there's a couple little additions also as well. I will, the subject matters that I'm going to go over tonight, just a very brief history of the landslide as we've seen it to date over this past month. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the immediate safety measures that our team engaged with upon discovering the slide. We're going to go over a little bit of the funding aspects to the project, what we can expect timeline-wise, and some of the next steps. And then what we really want to do is move on to the items of community concerns. We know there's a lot of concerns out there. We appreciate all of your concerns. I'll probably start by going over some of the frequently asked questions that we've received over the past week. And then after we get through those, hopefully answers a lot of the questions you may have. We'll then turn it over to the group in the webinar to receive comments from you. And I think those will come either in the form of Q&A. You can go ahead and type your questions in there and we'll try to get to them. And then also, Tiffany, I believe we'll have the ability to take verbal questions as well. Yeah, so, okay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which I have this small PowerPoint slideshow that I'm going to present. And so maybe if the panelists can give me a nod, if you can see it, great. Okay, so we're just going to move right along. The first slide here shows actually the original damage that happened in January of 2023. So we had a massive storm system come through our county that actually several atmospheric rivers. This was involved in one of them. And this is where we documented some damage where we lost the embankment of Mount Charlie Road near the driveway that everyone is now very familiar with. And the crew went out there and they did what they normally do. They put in their storm protective measures. We assessed the site, we logged it in, and this is actually part of a FEMA event that has eventually we'll have some funding to repair this site. Okay, so moving on to this year, and this was Monday, February 26th. This is when we first discovered cracking in the road. The crew went up, took a look at it, and obviously we're very concerned because we're seeing several inches opening up here. And so we're watching this very carefully in the ensuing days. 3 days later, on February 29th, is this is what it looked like then, and it had already dropped 6 inches to a foot. And this was when we decided to close the road. There was forecast rain for that weekend, and it looked like it was going to continue moving. And it's a good thing that we did close it, because on March 1st, this is what it looked like. So, you know, in the spirit of keeping folks safe, we closed the road. And at this point is when we started contacting a lot of the utility companies we know that operate in the area. And then Public Works continued to monitor actually the movement through that weekend. So on March 2nd, it had dropped a couple more feet. And then on Sunday, March 3rd, it had dropped even more. And we were realizing this was becoming a much larger issue than we had hoped for. And the story unfolded. This is what it looked like on March 7th. This was the day that we sent our survey crew out to install some survey monitoring points. We installed 3 of them so that we could actually start getting a handle on what the rate this thing was dropping at. And then every week after that, we took measurements. And so this is on March 13th. It had still dropped even more, probably another 1.5 feet. And then on March 18th, we saw another foot plus drop. March 20th, which was last week, it was still dropping at a rate of about a foot per week. And then this photo was actually taken just yesterday on March 25th. So we still continue to watch the slide as it progressed. But I just wanted to point out that the survey crew did get out there, and we've been able to start collecting some technical data on how quickly the slide is moving. And as of last week, it was still moving over a foot vertically per week and approximately 2 feet horizontally. So that's pretty significant. Definitely too much movement for us to get out there and do anything, that's for sure. And this is probably really hard to see, but it just confirms the data that we've been collecting, that we were seeing over a foot drop per week. Now, the good news is, there's one little tiny piece of good news, is that it looks like it's slowing down. So we were getting over a foot per week. And over this past week, it's only dropped about 4 inches. And it's pretty consistent throughout all of the survey points that we took. Anywhere between 4 and 6 inches is what we're noting drop in this last week. So that's good. That means it's slowing down a little bit, even with the rain we had last weekend. Okay, so with that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the immediate actions we took. Again, this is a bit of a repeat from last week. But within days after closing the road, we had contacted PG&E, we contacted Summit Mutual Water, we started working with Green Waste on figuring out what their collection scheme was going to be, and we contacted some of the communication companies. We did hear back from PG&E, from Summit Mutual, and also worked with Green Waste to get turnarounds in so that we can continue garbage collection services. We had a hard time hearing back from some of the communication companies. And so we're starting to get stories that maybe the comms up there aren't as good as maybe they used to be. So we're going to be tracking that and working on that over the next week or so. We also contacted Law and Fire, realizing that should something happen up there, we still need to be able to deliver emergency services. So the Sheriff's Office, they'll respond from either side of the slide, north or south, depending upon what the issue is and what the call location is. Now, Fire has let us know that they've let Netcom understand that there's a closure there on Mount Charlie Road. Netcom is the 911 service. So when you call 911 for emergency services, it goes to Netcom. That's the agency that's responsible to then contact either law or fire dispatch. And so they've made some modifications to the response for areas below the slide. Scotts Valley Fire Department would be requested to automatically respond. It's an automatic request, goes right to them. And then any calls for service above the slide area, the response would come from County Fire or CAL Fire. Also, the battalion chiefs have been notified and directed to modify fire response should additional equipment be needed. They understand that there's limited turnaround areas and so forth. And so they've made plans and preparations for those logistical needs as well. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the funding timeline and sort of the next steps. So this is where the news isn't so great, which is, of course, this is a brand new situation that's unfolding before our eyes. And so we have not identified any funding to date. Obviously, the county is going to need to create a finance plan to both design and construct the repair. And so we're in the process of trying to identify funding. We're working with our local, state, and federal partners, both legislatively and then also staff, to turn over every rock we can, basically to try and find funding to implement this repair. We've been in touch with FEMA to add this scope, and this is one of the things I really believe, and we'll be doing some technical studies to try to relate the damage that is occurring today, that what we're seeing today, as part of the site that is in the FEMA catalog for storm damage repairs from 2023. I've already been in touch with Jimmy Panetta's office. This is our federal assembly member. They understand that how important it is to get FEMA engaged with this process, and so they're actually going to be helping with those communications as well. And I'm just going to touch on the timeline. I went over this last week a little bit. I want folks to get, I know this is a difficult situation for everyone up there, and everyone's had to modify their lives considerably as a result of Mount Charlie Road being closed. We understand that. We're going to work as quickly and as efficiently as we can. In my experience, these things don't get solved really quickly. When you have a slide that's this massive, it's still moving, obviously, as we speak today. And typical timelines for repairs are anywhere from 1 to 3 years. I put the 3 years out there. As Supervisor McPherson will recall, in 2011, we had a massive slide happen on Nelson Road, just outside the city of Scotts Valley in the unincorporated area. That took us about 3 years to study the slide, come up with recommendations for repair, and to put all the funding together necessary to actually repair the slide and get Nelson Road back up and running. So I want folks to understand this is not a fast process. We're certainly engaged. We're monitoring this thing on a daily basis, and we're having daily conversations with our partners about this, and we'll continue to do that until we find hard solutions. But it's going to take some time. And so what really the next steps are for the county is, now that the slide is starting to slow its rate of slumping, we'd like to get our geotechnical partners. So we've got a consulting firm on board actually to do the geotechnical investigation. These are the right folks to do it because they actually are the ones who did the investigations on some of the other sites on Mount Charlie that were damaged from last year. So today we received approval from the county administration office to move forward with installing some instrumentation into the slide bank. And so we want to get down there on that section of Mount Charlie Road that is slumping and is dropping. And so we'll have to cut our way down to get a drill rig down there. And the first step is to install an inclinometer. An inclinometer is basically a hole that we drill. It's a geotechnical boring. It goes down about 70 to 80 feet. And the goal of that is to pierce the slide plane, the slip plane, so that we can then monitor both subsurface groundwater and also where the majority of all the slipping is happening. That will help lead us to what the eventual solution for repair is going to be. So the good news is that we did receive approval to move forward with installing the inclinometer. And depending upon how quickly we can get out there, we're going to potentially try to beat the rain this weekend, because we are actually forecast for 1 to 3 inches up in the mountains for this weekend. If we can't get it in at the end of this week, it's probably going to be another week or two before we can get the drill rig out there to do it. But it's still going to have great value, and it'll be the beginning of our detailed geotechnical investigation of the slide area. Okay, and I'm briefly going to touch on the finance plan. I'd mentioned that the county's going to have to come up with that, and really that's something that right now is unknown. We are definitely asking all the right questions. We have heard from the community questions about, are we engaging with the state? Are we engaging with the federal government? And we are doing all of that. And in fact, we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with our legislators from the area, both in the Senate, the state Senate and Assembly. So that would be Assembly Member Gail Pellerin's office. And also, I believe Senator John Laird's office will have representation at this meeting as well. And so that's good. And we're going to begin that discussion as to how do we identify the funding to enact this repair. Okay, so this is items of community concern and needs. And I think what I'll do is just go over a few questions that I've heard recently from the community. And then I'll turn it over to Director Machado, and he can cover some items as well. So one of the questions that's come up a few times is the county aware of the slide that's about 100 yards south of this location? And the county is aware. Um, and it's something we don't have any solutions for or anything like that, but we're going to watch it. We're going to monitor it. It is below the road. It hasn't taken the road with it. It could continue to progress or it could arrest itself as we're seeing with the existing slide. And so we're at this point, we are just in a monitor mode. And since we're going up there a lot, we're able to, just take a look at that and see how it progresses. We don't have any plans to do anything else other than monitor at this point. One of the other questions that's come up is what are plans for an alternative road? And at this time, we do not have plans for an alternative road. We do see that, there are some private roads in the area, but some of those traverse several private properties. And quite honestly, the condition of some of those roads, we noted that they're not in great shape. And even if we could get permission to use those roads, they would take a tremendous amount of improvement. They would be one way, that most likely 4-wheel drive type of road. So we haven't found any alternative to just, traversing either north or south on Mount Charlie at this time. Some of the questions have been just about the general condition of Mount Charlie Road, noting that the southern end of Mount Charlie Road is in poor condition, and will the county make any repairs and improvements? I can tell you that, immediately after closing the road crew did go up there and fill some of the larger potholes. Mount Charlie is going to get a little extra special attention this summer as we go through our regular maintenance season, just because we know that, the southern area especially is getting a lot more use than it has, before the slide occurred. And so that's going to involve, vegetation maintenance, making sure the ditches are clear and trying as much as possible to keep the road surface in good condition. And then one of the other questions just is about communication. How's the county going to communicate information out to the community as we march through the process of trying to identify funding and come up with repair schemes? And so I believe we're going to be standing up a website. We've been working with our communication specialist, Miss Tiffany Martinez here, who's on the call. And I think we're getting close to being able to roll out a website. And what we'll do is we'll just put information on that website. We'll be able to get that information out to the greater community once we get a URL identified for that website. And we'll populate the website with technical data as we collect it, and any type of funding information that will help aid in the repair. At some point, we'll re-engage with the community in a webinar similar to what we're doing this evening as well, when we have significant information to offer, something that's worthy of having this type of a meeting. We definitely do that. And I don't know if there'll be a regular cadence on that, or if that'll be just something we do as information comes in and it's important enough to share in a venue of this style. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Machado, and he's going to cover just a little bit of some of the funding questions that we've been getting.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everybody. I want to start by giving a kind of a more global perspective on the county finances and storm damage in general. And so last year in January, February, March, we sustained significant storm damage. And it was a state and federal declared disaster. So that was some assistance from a financial standpoint. But that said, in this past year, we repaired about $78 million of storm damage from that one disaster, that 2023 disaster. That was a little over 100 sites, and we're trying to wrap those up now. And it really tapped all of our resources to the point of having to issue debt, issue bonds. And that's supposed to, well, we hope it occurs this spring, and which is, wasn't the desired outcome we want with storm damage, but it was the only tool we had to turn to. And what that means is we also have to make debt service on that bond issuance. And so at this point, it's difficult to secure additional financing. That doesn't mean we won't be able to finance future improvements, that just in the short term, our hands are rather tied. And the reason why it's just a short-term bigger problem is because the main reason we're having to finance this $78 million of storm damage is because of the slow reimbursement rate from FEMA. And so we know some of this debt will be short term, 1 to 3 years, and then we can retire that debt, and it'll provide us additional debt capacity to pursue additional needs. Now, that said, as Steve mentioned, we did secure about $30,000 just today so that we could start this geotech work. And that's really important. And so we may not have a grand plan to solve the entire Mount Charlie situation, but we're certainly investing in it now. And there's two thoughts to that. The first thought is that as we gather geotechnical information, it'll lead us to a design. That design will lead us to a cost estimate. That cost estimate will then define the finance needs that we have, and then we can pursue that. And so we'll be doing that as quickly as possible, pursue the data, pursue a design. That design will be an additional investment. And so we'll deal with that when it's time to start that design work. We'll deal with that financial element. It'll be a smaller element than, say, the construction. So we're really trying to attack this problem step by step, piece by piece. Just because we don't have a grand finance plan to solve the whole problem doesn't mean we're not taking really good steps forward to start solving it. So you can see that's, with Steve's sharing of the inclinometer, that's a first good step, and that will continue. And we're hopeful, and we plan that we will be able to finance the rest of it, especially as that short-term debt that we incur this spring gets relieved due to FEMA reimbursement. So that's our plan. It's nothing in concrete yet, but it's certainly our vision, and we think it won't slow the overall project down at this point. So we're pursuing as quickly as possible. I do think it aligns with Steve's overall schedule that he shared, which I know is not what people want to hear, but it really is closer to reality than not. Next, I want to share a little more specificity to some of the finance that the community's brought up. And we had a number of people bring up the idea that why can't we start dedicating Measure K to this, which is a new sales tax measure. So this year it was approved by the voters, which is good news for all of us. The income from it will be a partial year because we're partially into the year. I will tell you this first revenue from Measure K, from the roads perspective, will be going towards making debt payments, debt service to the bond that will be issuing this spring to pay for work that's already committed to, work that's already built. And so we're committed to that. So we don't have a choice to not pay for that. It's already been built, and we've paid people, we owe more contractors, and so that has to happen. And so that's what we see in this first year of the Measure K. The following years might have a similar answer. That'll be to decide it in those future years, just as we will decide future financing for Mount Charlie. And so that's the update today. The other thing that I'll leave you on is that just because we're talking about financing and debt service and all those opportunities and options, we'll be looking at other opportunities and options as well. Everything's on the table. I can tell you we are fine-tooth combing every budget portion, every program, all of it. We're looking at all of it. All of it's on the table. We just don't have a solution yet, but we're actively pursuing one. So I'll stop with that. And Steve, should I turn it back to you or should we just go straight to Q&A? I think we should go straight to Tiffany. Are you going to help us moderate I see the questions. I haven't read them, but yes. I know there's a lot of them in there.
Yes, we do have some questions here, and some of which have been addressed. But the first one is from Debbie. Is there an update on any adjustments to our property taxes?
Okay, I know Dave Reed was going to help us get to that, and I don't think he has been able to get an answer. So we're still pursuing that. I did message him a bit ago, and I know he has a conflict tonight with another meeting. So we'll get some answers and include that in our next update.
We'll also include a frequently asked questions on the Mount Charlie Road page. That way you can reference any commonly asked questions as well. Okay, the next question is, given that there is very little road left for a drill rig to access, even if the slide were to stop and a ramp constructed, would you consider using remote sensing technology such as a ground penetrating radar or an airborne electromagnetic survey? It seems like waiting for the slide to completely stop before taking action is a waste of time.
So I can take this, and I noted that Daniel actually commented later on in the Q&A that never mind my question because you guys already answered it by saying that we're going to get a drill rig out there. So yeah, we were going to have to cut a path, a ramp down to the bench there, but we think we can do it. And so thank you for that question, Daniel. We'll move on to the next one.
Okay. So the next one's from Luke. So the 2023 January damage is covered under FEMA, but now that it progressed to larger, it is not covered.
So yeah, so the way that the FEMA declarations work, the local, state, and federal declarations is that they have a time period. It's either a single date or a time period. The January 13th time period that we have for the damage that happened last year obviously doesn't line up with February 26th of 2024. So the case we're trying to make to FEMA is that this is the same damage. It's just progressed, and so it's sometimes a difficult case to make, but we've done this before. It's additional damage to the same site caused by the same thing. That's the case we're trying to make. Let's hope we're successful.
Thank you, Steve. The next question is, can we please have a temporary pedestrian bridge put in so we can at least safely walk across?
So at this point, we can't answer that question. Depending upon where this thing finally settles out and the type of work that we need to do there. Like for instance, if we had a ped bridge there, we wouldn't be able to get a drill rig even down to that bench to do the work. And so we haven't determined whether that's something that's possible or not. And so I can't really answer the question. It's not a terrible idea, but it's a little too early in the process to be able to answer that.
If funding was not an issue and had already been allocated, how long would the fix take?
This could be like, 6 months from the time we do our investigation to designing to repairing. So it'd probably be most likely be in 2025. We'd be doing the repair if we had everything lined up and we're able to move through in a linear process. Hey, Tiffany, I'm noting that the questions you're reading from are the new ones coming in. Like if you go to the very bottom, I think those are the older ones.
Mm-hmm. I'm showing that my timestamp is the bottom ones are the newer ones and the top ones are the older ones, because the first one I have is 620 and the last one I have is 632 at the bottom.
Gotcha. Okay, mine's backwards.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
The next question is there any consideration for a temporary repair, like some kind of dropped in structure?
In this case, that might be difficult to do just because of the alignment of the road. It's not, I would tell you that we're not ruling anything out, but with the driveway there and the way that the land is moving, that seems like it might be difficult. But again, right now, we're not ruling anything out. So thank you for that idea. It's definitely something we'll be considering.
Okay, the next question is, we are all having issues with fire insurance being canceled. This is not going to help. Any chance we can get a stay supported so we can work through the condition? So I guess like an insurance, maybe payment of some sort, or like how can they get their stay, I guess, outside of their home supported as we work through the road repairs, is my understanding of the question.
It's like almost like a legal type of thing. Like they're asking if the legislature could pass some kind of law to keep insurance companies from dropping them. And I'm not aware of a process to do that. I live up in the mountains too, and all my neighbors are getting dropped, and we're probably all going to have to be on the fair, the fair program at some point. So no answer for that.
This one may be a Dave question, but we do have a question regarding what happens if there's a fire. How will residents on South Side safely get out and emergency people get in?
That's a very difficult question. I know that we have the fire chief on. It's the thing about fires is very situational. Like, where is the fire? Where is it progressing towards? What I've learned through going through the CZU fire and some of the other emergency incidences we've had is it's very difficult to plan for something like this. Now, if I'm reading your question correctly, if a fire starts burning up from the south and there's no way to get out, there would be some type of way to shuttle folks across the slide and try and get people out the north. And it's something we're thinking about right now as we obviously come out of winter into spring.
Thank you, Steve. There are also other questions that are related to the fire incident, so I will have to skip through that since you answered that. The next question is, how about Governor Newsom's emergency request for the past storm? Can that be applied?
So, and I'm thinking that you're talking about the past storm that just recently happened. And so we did actually have, we just got added to a state declaration that was the end of January. It was like January 31st through February 9th. Unfortunately, we first found the cracks on February 26th. So we don't have any evidence that this thing was moving on the 29th. And, you know, again, I think for us, the best case to make is that this is a larger growth in scope from the original damage that happened on January 13th, 2023.
Okay. The next one is Mountain Charlie, an alternate path to Highway 17. If so, can Caltrans fund it? If not, can the road be redesignated?
Matt, maybe I'll let you answer that. Our answers will probably be the same.
Yeah, I think it probably would be. So yeah, Caltrans is really, you know, by legislation, Highway 17's theirs. They invest in it. There's not really a legislative opportunity for them to invest in Mount Charlie, nor redesignate it any differently and then pursue the repairs. Highway designation's a legislative item and meets certain standards, so I don't see an opportunity for that.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Sorry, I'm just reading through the questions to see which ones are comments or related to Mountain Charlie Road. Okay, this ramp for the drill rig, is that a ramp allowing a truck to go down the broken section and back up? Wondering if that ramp can be done on both sides to make walking and biking across easier.
That's a great section. It'll probably just be done on one side to begin with. But I will tell you that in past instances where we had situations like this, we've been able to do some creative grading to allow for a little bit more mobility in the area. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it's something we'll consider certainly moving forward.
Thank you, Steve. We do have a few questions regarding response time for fire that I think we will have to address at a later date until we have better answers for that. So I'm just going to scroll down to the next question that's relevant to Mountain Charlie Road. If there's an evacuation, we will open the gate at the bottom of Harris Lane to facilitate exit. Okay, I don't know if that's a possibility, but the gate was open and left open during CZU evacuation. Is that something that would be possible this time around?
I'm not sure exactly where that is. Can you read that question again?
Yeah, I added it. I added the question to that because it was a comment, but I think that that's sort of what they're getting at is if there's an evacuation, we will open the gate at bottom of Harris Lane to facilitate an exit. The gate was open and left open during the CZU evacuation. So I guess the question leading up to that would be if that would be something that we can do this time around too.
You know, it's really a question for fire. And if, you know, I think potentially Chief Wilson is on right now, and I don't know if we can elevate him to a panelist. What I know about fire is they'll use any and every means they have available to them to evacuate people. So even across private property and all these other things and in the event of an emergency. And so that's kind of what I know about how they operate. It's not something they're going to open up for everyday use, that's for sure. And if Chief Wilson wanted to make a few comments regarding that, we would take them now. And if he's not able to, then we can jot the questions down and get information back out.
Chief, if you're on the call, if you can raise your hand. Okay, perfect. I will allow you to speak. You should be able to unmute now.
Tiffany, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so for the folks up there, what we've done is we use Zone Haven for part of our evacuation planning. And we've already built in alternate kind of escape routes or routes for residents. So if we do need to open up private gates or things like that in the event of an emergency, we would do those on a case by case basis.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, scrolling down, we do have some comments on the Q&A, so I'm scrolling down to find the next question related to Mountain Charlie Road. Yes, so you are actually able to ask questions live. You just have to use the hand raising feature at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to ask a question. And I do see, Ken, that you do have your hand raised up, so you will have the ability to unmute now.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me, Tiffany?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Once again, Tiffany, Steve, Matt, Bruce, and Jim, thanks so much for doing this. You know, it's under these difficult circumstances, being informed is always very valuable. I went down to the slide yesterday, and I could still see water seeping through the middle area. And I don't know, my question is, I don't know if that is contributing to the, or contributed to the slide in the past, either because, you know, if you get water underneath the slides, you can make it unstable. And if that is as a result of one of the burst pipe, which means somebody needs to do something about it, or if it is some kind of a drainage gone wrong, then water needs to be diverted away from that. So I don't know if that has been looked into. That one. That's one question. Second is, I saw a lot of cars being parked north of the slide, which means a lot of people are walking over that slide. And in my opinion, I'm not a geotech engineer, but if the slide is unstable, something bad's going to happen, you know, soon. So I don't know how you're viewing all of this, because that slide is changing shape, and that water going underneath it might make it worse. Just wanted to ask, you know, what's being done.
Thank you.
Those are good questions, Ken. Thank you for those. If I'm hearing you right, we noted the same water, and it's seepage actually that we noted that's coming out of the headscarp of the slide, which is the upper area where you can see the bare earth near the driveway. That's groundwater, and it is seeping out of the slide. It's likely that it is contributing to why this slide is happening. High groundwater table, poor water pressure. You know, the soils break apart, they lose their cohesion, and we start to lose chunks down really steep hillsides. This area, we have noted that there's been many historical landslides in this area. If you look at digital elevation models of this area of Mount Charlie Road, there's historic landslides all over this place. This, you know, and what I tell people is, like, you could see a slide like this next year or not for 10,000 years. These slides have been happening in geologic time for a very long time, and we're experiencing one of those right now, and they are often water driven. That'll be some of the thing that we study when we get in there and we put the instrumentation and we do our borings. We'll study where the water's coming from, what's happening with it, and obviously that'll be part of any repair scheme, whether we have to do horizontal borings to relieve poor water pressure and these types of things. But till the thing really stops and we get a handle on what's going on, there's really not much for us to do at this moment. As far as the access goes, you know, this is one of those things, we have it closed. It's a hard closure. There's very little we can do aside from putting chain link fence and barbed wire up to keep people off of these slide areas. I mean, it's sort of at your own risk. We don't encourage people to cross that slide. We know it's still moving. And we would just caution people to be very, very careful.
Thank you, Steve. The next question, how much room does the drill rig need to get to the slide? There are a lot of cars parked north of the slide. Only one normal sized car can get through. Accessing the slide from the south would be easier for a large vehicle.
Thank you. That's a good point well taken. The drill rig itself is going to come in on a fairly long flatbed, like a lowboy. We're going to need room for a turnaround. We'll probably have to send the crew up there to make a ramp down. And at that point, we'll probably put notes on all the cars and tell you folks to please move your cars elsewhere so that we can get equipment in and start working on the slide.
The next question, given that 90% of the road doesn't even have base rock under it as is, would you consider using creative grading to allow auto traffic while you secure funding for the big fix?
Yes, I would say yes. You know, we're, like I said, everything's on the table, and we'll do everything we can to try to to assist the community in mobility.
The next question, which public office and who is going to champion for our repair fund add-on from FEMA? Jimmy Panetta?
So Jimmy Panetta is our federal representative in the area. He's been a strong advocate for all of our needs here in Santa Cruz County. And so we're working directly with his office. Supervisor McPherson, I don't know if you have anything to add to the conversation relative to engagement with our legislators, but I know from a staff level, we'll be very actively engaged.
No, I think it's a wait and see, when, what needs to be done, get a clearer picture of what needs to be done so they know what to apply for, in essence, I think would be the answer to that. But that's a general answer.
Thank you. The next question, the culvert on the north side of the slide has failed and rusted through. It's letting water just flow under the road. Is there a short-term plan to fix that?
We are aware of that. That is definitely something the crews will be addressing in the coming months or in conjunction with the repair of the slide.
Thank you, Steve. This one is somewhat related to the current situation, but also incorporates Redwood Lodge Road. Where does the Mountain Charlie repair fit in with Redwood Lodge Road, which will be fixed next?
That's a really good question. Right now, the county is having such extreme financial difficulties. We're unable to even start repairs on some of the areas that we're ready to go on. And the Redwood Lodge Road repair that you referred to, that's another county road that is completely severed, and it needs to be repaired. I would have to say in some ways that could be a little higher priority because it's actually on, it's a funded project. We've got funding in place for that project. So it's a matter of the county being able to float the cash flow. We don't have funding, nor is this Mountain Charlie slide attached to any event at this moment. And so it's hard for us to prioritize it. It is very much so a high priority for us. We understand the impact to the community up there and the importance of Mountain Charlie Road. But at this time, it's very difficult to even compare those two. And I can tell you this, that Redwood Lodge Road is being delayed. At the very earliest, we'll start that project is going to be summer 25, and it might be later than that.
Thank you, Steve. I'm not sure if this question is related directly to Mountain Charlie Road, but when will the existing FEMA project at 1.66 or 1.69 start? I don't know if we have an ongoing project in that area with that postmark.
So Hugh, that's a good question. So the site at 1.66 is the one I showed. That was the first slide I showed that occurred January 13th, 2023. That is still being considered, pardon me, still being considered by FEMA for actually a scope of work. We still don't have an approved scope of work for them. Now we've done the assessment, we've sent them all the information, we've got an estimate, we've got an idea of what the repair scheme will be, and we still haven't heard back from FEMA on an approved scope of work. So, but we do anticipate that they will be approving that scope of work because it is part of the event from last year that was declared. This said, what we're trying to do is take this one, I'm calling this 1.65, the newer slide. It's basically encompassing the other damage. And again, in my mind, both of these sites are part of the same event and they really should be included in the same event. And that's sort of, until we hear no, until we get a no, like, emphatically no, stop asking the question, we're going to continue to ask that question.
Thank you, Steve. There are many blind turns and an absence of pull-out locations. What improvements are planned on downward side of Mountain Charlie Road?
So we don't have any of those type of improvements planned at this time. The point is well taken. The crew did go up and make turnarounds for green waste so that they could get their garbage collection trucks in and out of there. But you do raise a good point. It's something maybe that we'll take a look at to see if there's any opportunities that we can try to widen out a little bit just to give a little bit more room. But I don't have an exact answer for that, other than we will be upping our normal maintenance on Mountain Charlie Road.
We do have several questions regarding fire response. Do we want to default to Chief to answer these questions, or do we want to address these questions at a later time and on our Mountain Charlie Road page?
You know, they're very specific to fire, and it'd be very difficult for Public Works to really answer these questions for fire. And they're so situational that I think that our community is going to need to communicate directly with their fire representation. So we need to figure out how to maybe connect those dots, and whether Chief Wilson wants to answer those questions on this call right now for the benefit of the greater community, or wants to take individual, calls at the CAL FIRE office. However we can facilitate that communication, I think we should, but it's not questions that Public Works can answer.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Chief, you should be allowed to unmute.
Yeah, I think the best would be, Tiffany, if you could put those questions together with the contacts and email them to me. I can't view the question and answers, so it would kind of be rapid fire, I guess you'd say, in the last 10 minutes that we have.
Absolutely.
And I will follow up with each of those community members. And you could give them my email as well, which should be on here.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I will do that because we do have a few questions regarding fire response that I think would be best addressed by your team. So I'll go ahead and forward you those questions. Thank you. Okay, Michelle, I see your hand is up. You should be able to unmute now.
Yes, all right. I've been living on Old Japanese Road for, I don't know, 17, 18 years. And I have never seen maintenance being done on Mountain Charlie Road. To be honest with you, when trees come down, we go out, residents go out with their own chainsaws, clean up the road. When there's a slide, residents go out and clean the road. So the road is in this condition because there was really no paving, no maintenance done in the 20 years I've been living here. So I'm not sure what you guys are, 3 years to get this thing done. People are trying to sell their homes. This is a really big impact on our lives. This is not, a minor stuff. This is, for many people, we're close to retirement. We're thinking about selling our homes, and you're basically asking, well, please put this on hold for a couple of years, and then we'll get back to you. That's unacceptable. I mean, if I was to do this at work, I'd get fired. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. The next question is, can the 100 Road residents be assessed a special charge to help fund this repair and have it removed from future property taxes?
Yeah, I'll dig into that one. I think that's absolutely on the table in terms of how it relates to future property tax. We are looking at those type of financial mechanisms to partner with the community, meet them halfway. We hear the comments about lack of maintenance or slow response to some of these storm damage repairs. And it really is about money. It really is. And our county has been in this situation for decades. This is not a new situation, but we're one of the poorest counties in the state. And we have some of the largest number of disasters in the state. And it's just a really bad combination. And so our county really struggles with resources. And so if there's a way to partner with the community to bring more resources to the table, to do more routine maintenance, or to do some of these repairs more quickly, we are absolutely open to that conversation. And I suspect at some point we will put pen to paper and try to host some community meetings and do some outreach and see if there is support for that. So thank you for raising that question.
Thank you, Matt. I just want to remind everybody that the topic here is Mountain Charlie Road. So let's please keep your questions related to the landslide on Mountain Charlie Road. Kathy, I see that your hand is up. You should be able to unmute to ask your question.
Yes, hi. So I was actually going to ask a question about the funding. You had mentioned that having the residents contribute and then potentially taking off of the property taxes, future years could be on the table, and working with the community for funding. I was wondering if we could use places like the Santa Cruz Community Foundation, for example, to set up a special fund, or I don't know, here are just ideas I have, or for the companies that we work with, maybe they would be able to fund some of the repairs on Mountain Charlie. I mean, are all these things that you think could potentially work?
Well, we would certainly entertain any of those conversations. I mean, if there's a way to bring in private business, homeowners, combination of all of them, we're open to that conversation. I do think that it's going to take a community solution to resolve all the issues that are raised here, not just this one slide, but the deferred maintenance on all of our roadways and all of the conditions that we see out there, and all of the disasters that we've experienced over the past number of years. So I think all that's on the table, and maybe we can take that offline and brainstorm how to approach that.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, I just want to do a time check. We do have 4 minutes left before we end this meeting. So if you are interested in asking your question live, please raise your hand and we'll do our best to get to everybody's question. Okay, so I see Eric, your hand is up. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you all for your attention to this matter. Since we are looking at 1 to 3 years of delay in opening up the road, once we move the excavator in and start driving sheet piles to shore in the collapsed road and begin repairs, is there an opportunity to leverage that mobilization and address the other recent slides between Harris and the collapsed road?
I will just say, Eric, that would take money, right? And so some of the slides that happened in 2023 are on our lists of damage, and we're awaiting final scopes and approval from FEMA on those. Interestingly enough, some of those slides, to repair them, it's actually going to take closing the road because the road is so narrow in those locations. So it'd be very difficult for us to go repair those sites while this site is closed as well, because there may be residents in between.
The same site. It's the same area.
You're talking about the one that's just 100 yards south?
Well, it's between Harris and the collapsed road. It's about a half a mile, and that whole section is currently closed. If we're bringing in a excavator, it seems to me it'd be an opportunity to leverage mobilization and at least shore up the other slides from damaging the road further. Getting
Sure.
ahead of it.
If we have the money in place for those, then we could definitely do them at the same time.
Well, excellent,
yeah.
Steve. And Steve, you're really good. I want you to know I'm 100% supportive of you. But I think that when we put in the FEMA request, we should have you guys do a damage survey of that whole section and really, take a long-term evaluation to leverage the mobilization to our advantage.
That's a great point. And actually, we were planning to do that on the other sites that were damaged in 23. We were planning to build a lot of those kind of at a similar time frame. So yeah, it's really a matter of getting the financial plan in place and getting our plans in place also for the repair scheme. So, but your point is well taken, and I agree with you. Anytime we can piggyback on a double, mobilization we absolutely want to do that. Thank you for your point, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay, I see 2 hands up, so we will answer 2 more questions before we conclude this meeting. Mark, you should have the ability to unmute yourself to ask your question.
Okay, I've been making improvements to Mountain Charlie Road now for 30 years. I've put in turnouts. I now have a helicopter evacuation landing zone on the top of our hill, so that and CAL FIRE has approved it. That was Battalion Chief Eric Byther. But my point is that it isn't easy to get approval for some of these things. I want to do some more turnouts, but one of them wouldn't be safe without a bollard on one end. But I was told that there needed to be a guardrail for the whole thing, which is absurd. So how do we work together so that we can make these things cheaper and we can make better emergency vehicle access because we can get people off the road. When 2016 and 2017 happened, there were 25 cars parked on our place because I'd made those turnouts. That's what made it possible to get people through. But there aren't people who have such capabilities even being notified. By the way, this would be a really cool turnout. Can you help us? So this needs to go both ways. And so I'm just letting you know that I've been doing a lot of this stuff, and it's been kind of frustrating because although I've gotten good cooperation when I did the embankment off the side of the road, but that was Travis Reber who helped me with that one. But the point is that we need to be educated as to how to manage traffic in those situations. We need to be in communication with you guys about maybe we can start fixing our own potholes. And that means that we need to be, in a sense, approved to do that kind of work because it's your road, right? So I just want to see a better cooperative arrangement between property owners and the county so that these things can happen cheaper, faster, easier, and including facilitating communication among the people in the community. Like, for instance, taking trees down that are a hazard to the road. I mean, I've been taking trees out for years, for decades. So anyway, that's all I have to say. It's just one of those, being public spirited has been a pain in the butt.
I would just thank you for the work you've done up there, Mark. I know you and I have spoken in the past, and I would say if you have any other ideas that involve encroachments into the road, just come to us. We're all ears.
We have a biggie, which is on the south end of our property. There is an old slide below the road. In fact, the road was actually rerouted past it. And that slide was started by the Spanish when that was back in the 1700s. The head wall below the road there is 50 feet high, and it's starting to subside, and that's the only way out. Could you guys please put a little tar there and seal it?
Hey, Mark, if you could send me either an email or get in touch with me separately, that would be great. We could look at that area specifically together.
I'll do it.
Thank you. I want to address the cyclists. The question's come up a few times from Sean. Sean, we do have signs that say the road's closed, and I think most of the cyclists are starting to get it. Your point about discouraging cyclists, we can't eliminate cyclists from our roadways. They have the right to be there. But maybe to your point, we could put a sign up that just says, no throughway and, bikes not advised or something. We'll look at something like that. Your point is well taken.
Okay, the last question. I see, Emily, your hand is up. You should have the ability to unmute now to ask your question.
Thanks, Tiffany. First, I just wanted to call out that we're all here for Mountain Charlie Road. I know there's a question I posed that's related to Mountain Charlie Road, and I don't know if it was skipped because it wasn't understood to be part of Mountain Charlie Road, but I wanted to ask that we cover all of them. And if we can't cover them within this time, like last time, if you wouldn't mind following up and making sure all of our questions are answered. I also recall that you mentioned that if we needed to go a little bit late, we could. The question that I asked about Mountain Charlie Road is that there's a second slide. I wanted to understand how we're assessing that, what kind of risk we see with that slide, because it actually looks from the drone shots to be bigger than the main slide. And looking over the edge, it's incredibly steep there. We are walking over that area. I'm not taking my kids over it yet, but I really would like to understand this, what's being done to evaluate that, and what are kind of next steps there, because that looks pretty huge. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. The one that's just south that was noted in the drone footage that we got, we haven't done anything more than taking a look at it. When we get up there with the geotech to start putting in instrumentation, we're going to show it to him as well. We're going to show it to their team and try to get some advice. The county geologist has definitely looked at it, and he's reported back to us on what his findings were. And it's all visual at this point, right? And just to be frank with everyone here, you know, Mountain Charlie Road has been experiencing these type of slides for basically forever, since the road's been built. We've repaired, I honestly can't even count on two hands how many slides that have been repaired up there, even in the last decade. So this is something that we're used to seeing. Sometimes these slides happen below the road and nothing happens to the road. They arrest themselves. The slope reaches its natural angle of repose. Sometimes it just seems like magic, because you're like, how could that thing still be standing up? But we have a lot of roads that are built on almost near vertical embankments all over the Santa Cruz Mountains, from Bear Creek to Mountain Charlie Road to Glenwood, all the way across to Summit to Eureka Canyon. This is a very common situation, actually. So just to answer your question, we'll be taking a look at it, but I can't tell you exactly to what level of detail we'll be evaluating that slide. Right now, obviously, there's absolutely no funding for that. And we're kind of trying to wrap our heads around the slide that we're talking about today, which is massive. And it's taken not only Mountain Charlie Road, but it's taken a driveway to, 5 properties. And so that's where we're focused right now. We are aware of that other slide, and we're aware of a lot of the other conditions that exist on Mountain Charlie Road. And if any of you have any specific questions about the other areas on Mountain Charlie Road or this slide, I would invite you to give me a call. Happy to take a call from any one of you and have a chat about this. You don't have to wait for another public forum. And you can email us as well. We've received several emails throughout the last few weeks. We'll try to answer your email. Sometimes a conversation is the best way to do it, because these are complex subject matters. So just would invite you to, I know we're running out of time here. For folks who want to engage in a longer conversation, we're happy to do that.
I also added some information in the chat that I think would be helpful. The first one is Cruise Aware. You can get emergency updates from the county via Cruise Aware. I did send the meeting invite for this meeting via Cruise Aware, so you should have gotten text message and an email about this meeting. But also, if there's ever an emergency situation where you need to be notified, we encourage everybody, if you're not subscribed to Cruise Aware, please subscribe. It's very important to get emergency updates from the county. I also included links to the road closure GIS, which basically shows all the road closures in the county maintained roads, which is all the roadways in the unincorporated areas. That shows what projects are happening, what road impacts are live, and that's typically updated daily. Another link that I included in the chat is road impact notification emails. I send out emails specific to certain districts. You can sign up for all districts, or you can sign up just for District 5. You can get road impact notification emails sent to your inbox about any road impacts. So if you sign up for that, you'll have that as a resource. If you sign up for Cruise Aware, you'll also have that as a resource. And again, the road closure GIS is also another resource to sign up for. Team, I wanted to ask everybody before we close out if we have time for one more question. I do see somebody else has their hand up, and then we can close out this meeting. I know that everyone's question is very important, and we will have record of these questions after the meeting, and we will attempt to answer them with an FAQ that we're going to add to our website. That way, those who couldn't attend this meeting will also have access to those answers. Okay, I see Daniel, you should have the ability to unmute.
Hi, my point was, if we are really trying to get this thing to stop, should we hire crews to take the trees down that are on it? Because every time the wind blows, that's obviously putting stress on it, kind of like a big sail.
Yeah, it's not a bad point. In my experience, we do that when there's either slides haven't started yet. Once they've started and they're this massive, quite honestly, trees aren't really taking this thing down the mountain. We will look at doing some vegetation management on it, but now's not really the time to do it. It's really like the water's got to subside. The lubrication of the slip zone has got to kind of, stop. And this thing needs to settle out into its new location. And I don't think removing trees is going to either hasten that or cause it to, to slide less.
All right, thank you. One other thing for Tiffany, the last time you said you were going to post the video of the webinar somewhere, and I tried finding your YouTube channel or whatever, and I looked at the website. I couldn't find it. If you could post in the chat where these things are getting posted, because we have a Google group and people wanted to find the link.
Yes,
you.
thank you for the reminder, Daniel. So we actually decided not to post that video because we got several requests from community members not to post that because they shared personal information in that they don't want published, you know, outside in YouTube. So we want to respect the privacy of people attending our meetings. This meeting will be available on YouTube. It'll be available on our YouTube channel, which give me 1 second and I'll link that in the chat right now. That way you can have that saved. And it will also be available on our homepage for Public Works, which I also linked in the chat. It'll be under the announcements. Okay, so we did go a little over, and I wanted to thank everybody for joining this meeting. We do appreciate all of your questions, all of your feedback, all of your concerns. We're here to support you and, you know, get a better understanding of your situation. Of course, we want you all to be well informed about the progress happening. So once that page is ready, you will be able to access that using the announcements feature on our Public Works homepage. And then in that page, of course, we'll keep it updated. The idea is to have a blog, whether that's monthly or bi-monthly, just sharing the progress that's happening. Of course, we want you to be well informed. We want you to feel comfortable reaching out to us with any additional questions outside of this meeting. We're here to support you. Anyways, if anybody else doesn't have anything to add in this group, we can go ahead and conclude this webinar.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.